All right, team, let's get started. It's a couple minutes after here as folks continue to trickle in. Feel free to utilize that chat function to share where you're from. Welcome, Brantley. All right, team, welcome in everybody. My name is Kate Kotsko. I am a senior account manager with Panorama. I mostly support our district partners in the great states of Ohio, Illinois, and Michigan, which is where I am originally born and raised, and also where our guests are from today, our Big Rapids guests. Today, we will share a conversation that will focus on how Big Rapids Public Schools move from handling the burden of manual planning to a more connected instructional action with our Panorama Solara AI tool. And first and foremost, before we jump in, we're just going to go over some housekeeping notes. Thanks, folks, for continuing to introduce yourselves in the chat. Love it. But just our quick housekeeping notes here. First and foremost, we are going to record the session, which hopefully will be helpful for you so that you can send to any colleagues who might be interested in this discussion today. We'll email it out tomorrow. In addition to emailing out the recording, we will also make sure we send along some resources as well as the certificate of attendance. So you'll get all of that in your inbox tomorrow. We really appreciate you signing up to hear our conversation today. And last but not least, feel free to utilize the chat. Feel free to comment and ask questions along the way. We do have some Panorama colleagues on the call that will monitor the chat. And then at the end, we'll save a little space if we want to do kind of a live Q&A. So we do have some questions already prepared for our guests at Big Rapids. But at the end of the call, if we have additional time, we'd love to take questions from the audience. So feel free to share those. But before we jump in with our conversation with our Big Rapids folks, we'd love to hear from you in our chat, or if you want to answer our poll that we're going to put up in just a moment here. What are some of your district's priorities for this upcoming school year? What are some of the biggest challenges you're facing? And lastly, which technologies are you bringing in to help with some of those challenges? So feel free to add those into the chat or answer that poll that just popped up. We'll take a minute or so. I know we put on our poll here things like planning and differentiation, taking a lot of manual time, student data that's hard to translate into action, curriculum and support workflows are sometimes disconnected. Definitely things that we hear from a lot of our partners. Well, thank you so much for sharing, team. Appreciate it. We hear a lot of these same priorities and challenges from our 2,000 districts that we support across the nation. We can move along to the next slide. Great. So a little bit about Panorama, just in case you're new to us. I know many of you are probably current partners of ours, but just in case you aren't familiar with Panorama, this is basically our vision statement here. Essentially, we believe that improving education for every student stems from understanding them, from the hard to measure stuff to the data points that we track every day. Our vision ultimately is to provide you all with a panoramic view and action plan for every student to help improve their achievement and readiness for the world. And we know that districts have no shortage of student data, curriculum priorities, or good ideas. Lots of good folks doing good work across the country. But we know that one of the hardest parts is turning all of that into consistent, high-quality action across classrooms, grade levels, and support teams. And the reason why we've asked Big Rapids here to join us today is because this group has done an excellent job of not only rolling out the Panorama platform, but ensuring that the work that they're doing within the platform helps to support their MTSS teams with a consistent one-stop for student data. When they originally signed on with us several years ago, they signed up for both the surveys and the student success parts of our platform. They did a wonderful job implementing those two components. And then last year adopted Panorama Solara AI. And essentially the goal was helping their teams be able to save time with differentiated instruction and curriculum mapping. So without further ado, allow me to introduce our two guests today. We've got Elizabeth and Samantha from Big Rapids, and I'll have them introduce themselves here. Elizabeth, let's start with you. Can you briefly share your role at Big Rapids and the work you lead around MTSS and student support?
For sure. I am Elizabeth Robinson. I'm the MTSS Coordinator and the District Behavior Specialist at Big Rapids Public Schools. Um, and I lead the MTSS process with a partner of mine who is not able to be here today, and throughout our district, in coordination with teams at each individual building. And I'm available as a district behavior specialist for all students in our districts. So administrators are able to call me in if they need help with specific behavioral issues.
Great. Thank you so much for being here today. And Samantha, let's have you share as well. Would love to hear a little bit about your role and all of the different hats you wear at Big Rapids.
Of course. My name's Samantha Lipscomb. I teach science at Big Rapids High School. Early on in my time at Big Rapids, I joined and led the Literacy School Improvement Committee, and that kind of blossomed my passion for the school improvement process. It joined in with my significant love of data analysis. And I pursued a master's in curriculum and instruction, and that just solidified my involvement in the MyKit process and the school improvement process. I do a lot of work for Big Rapids High School in terms of school improvement and helping all of the teams be cohesive, but I'm also a part of the district MyKit team. And so I work with a lot of the building teams in the MyKit process, which is the Michigan Integrated Continuous Improvement Process.
We love a
So
good acronym in education, don't
yeah,
we?
yep. So I wear a lot of hats within the district, but all of it kind of centers around data analysis and school improvement from that data.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much for being here as well. We've got the dream team here, Elizabeth at the district level, Samantha at the high school level, and we'll touch on both of their experiences with using Panorama Solara AI in both of their roles. But before we jump into the nitty-gritty, would love to kind of just zoom out. And Elizabeth, if you wouldn't mind taking this first question here, would really love to hear before you all adopted Panorama Solara, before it came into the picture, what kinds of instructional or support work were taking the most time for your teams and happening in silos?
I think that what was taking the most time was differentiated instruction for sure. And being able to understand what we were doing and if it was really having an impact on student data on the other end. And to do that, we needed Panorama in the first place, just to give us all our one-stop shop, as you said. But we really started to throw a lot at the Solara tool to help us understand and how we might help students at different tiers and even in general across a grade level.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, that piece around the differentiated instruction, being able to see all the different tiers, super, super helpful to have a platform that keeps all of that in one spot. Would love to hear a little bit more about your team. So we know that you had a strong MTSS team with lots of amazing ideas, but sounded like at the beginning when you first adopted Panorama that you needed a little bit more structure. So would love to hear a little bit more about what that process of providing those structures looked like for you and your team.
Yeah, and I'm sure as with all other districts here at Big Rapids too, we have a super high achieving staff. So yes, we had a lot of ideas, but sometimes they didn't quite go anywhere. And we're kind of lost in the fray of getting everything done because we didn't have those structures in place quite yet. When we were able to get those structures into place, it helped us to understand what we needed and to highlight those voices within those teams. And we have them not only at the district level, but in each individual building. So when we are making decisions throughout the district, including our adoption of Solara, we have a team of people that get together to make those decisions. So we're not making them in silos. We're not making them in a vacuum. And people's strong and important voices get heard in each of those places.
Amazing. I love that, bringing the teams together. Samantha, we're going to jump over to you here to share a little bit more of what this looks like on the ground. So I know that in our planning for this call today, you shared that you take deep pride, as most teachers do, in creating materials that are not only, useful for your students, but differentiated, meet them where they're at. And that maybe you weren't actually automatically sold on using an AI tool to help support that work. But what made Solara useful to you? And would love to hear a little bit more about how you use it in conjunction with your educator judgment.
So yeah, so when I was a part of that team that evaluated Solara and if it fit our needs, and a lot of people hear AI and get an ick, but I was open to the idea because I know that it's useful to a lot of people. And so when we sat down and got to see it, I saw significant value in not just a general like time saver, but it was allowing for that differentiated instruction, that those ideas to really help students improve their understanding. So teaching science, that's a real struggle because science isn't everyone's cup of tea. And
Mhm.
working with ninth graders, it's particularly challenging with topics like astronomy. And my textbook is notoriously written at a higher lexile than a lot of that students can comprehend at the ninth grade level. And so being able to utilize that text and ask Solara to um, come up with ideas on how to prep students for it or work students through the material that they might not comprehend on the first go. But the fact that I can tie my class to the prompt and it can take the NWEA and all of the other data that it has on those students and really hone in on what each student needs, it just makes it that much more personalized. And so, yeah, I could go through that, and I have as a teacher going through all of their, the NWEA reports and all of that and figuring out who needs what. But the fact that I can, during my planning period, ask Solara to do this, have it come up very quickly, I can allocate my time to, okay, how am I going to do this in the classroom? What's this going to look like? What materials do I need? Like, and then set all that up rather than trying to spend all that time looking through the data and then just kind of flying by the seat of my pants when the lesson came. So in terms of generating material, like you said, I do take really deep pride in the material that I make. It does take a lot of time though. And there are, I mean, that's not something that I'm going to give up, but there are some things where like I can take an assignment already made, put it in a Solara and say, I'd like to do this with it too. What, what can be added on or whatever. And so it can offer me some suggestions on improvement in terms of generating something new altogether. I can go through. So for example, if I'm trying to come up with a introductory lab on, measuring stuff, Solara generated something and I went through and I was reading through it and kind of seeing how it would go. And then there was a data table that I was like, based on the instruction, like what, I don't understand what they would put here. And so I asked Solara, I went back and said, in data table 1, if this is what they're doing, how are they going to fill out this data? And it came back and explained, yes, this part is ambiguous for a reason. You can clarify this in the instructions. So the fact I can go back and forth with it and really understand rather than just, getting something off the internet and just doing whatever with it and figuring it out on my own, it offers me that rationale. So that educator oversight is still there, and I still feel like I'm taking ownership over it. I'm just getting clerical assistance, which is really nice.
Yes, it is like having your own little personal assistant. And I love that, you were able to say, like, what is the expected output here for my students? And then be able to kind of hear that rationale and be able to adjust from there. I think it's great to have that additional oversight. We always say that we definitely don't want any of our tools to replace teachers. We still feel that teachers, educators, their judgment is absolutely needed. We just want to your point, be able to save you time so that you're able to, focus on all the other many things that you have on your plate. So I love that example. And speaking of examples and use cases, Elizabeth, I'm going to pop back over to you. So I know when we first started talking about utilizing Solara at your district, something called the IRIP came up, and would love to hear a little bit about, and I'm sure even if you're not from the state of Michigan, you might have something similar in your state, a requirement for reading improvement. So would love for you to just kind of share a little bit more about what that process looked like before, and then how you utilized essentially Solara to streamline that process and make it a little bit easier. So this is reading improvement for K-5, is that right?
Yes. Well, K-5. IRIPs are only mandatory for K-3. So we have title teachers at each one of our elementary buildings, and they had to probably by September 30th, maybe second week of October, assess all K-3 students in each of our elementary buildings to determine what level they were reading at, and whether or not they needed this individualized reading plan, with the ultimate goal that we then created an individualized document in Google Docs for each student that needed one. So then we could share that with parents at student parent teacher conferences, typically the second week of October. So we would manually have to go in, and by we, I mean our 2 title teachers in each building. So that's not even a team of people, truly 4 people for however many students. I think we have about, if we're K-3, we may have 600 or 700 students in that group of students. So they would have to create individualized documents for those, and that took ages, weeks, a month. They were, how soon can we get the information so we can start plugging it into the Google Docs? But I was able to work with Nick Wolf at Panorama, and he helped to build a tool based off of our format that we had for filling in IRIP information. And because Panorama is such a nice one-stop shop, we are able to pull all of that information and use that tool in Solara to create these IRIPs for us. And the first time we did it, we were in I think we were just in heaven then, because we said we couldn't possibly be finished with this task already. It had taken myself and the title team at one particular building at Big Rapids half a day. And we had finished these IRIPs, and we're looking around and we're thinking, well, do we get the rest of the day off? We did such a good job.
Go to the spa, go get your nails done.
It's just been so helpful, and to take a little bit of that stress off of our title teachers means the world to me. If we can make teachers' jobs easier, that's a-okay for me.
Yes, working smarter, not harder. Love that example. So that was a good example of how you utilized it in the fall for back to school, helping to support your students with their reading improvement plans. But would also love to hear a little bit about the work you did this spring with being able to map your curriculum to basically like a scope and sequence. Would you mind sharing a little bit about how Solara helped you do that?
Yeah, so at Big Rapids, we've worked for 3 years now, I think, Sam, for installing MTSS. And part of that is the selection and deselection process. And I'm sure people who have heard of MTSS are familiar with that process, where we evaluate what we're doing for students and is what we are teaching them working, and using our data to figure that out. And once spring rolled around, we realized that our adoption cycle, along with the new dyslexia law coming in Michigan, we were able to evaluate some curriculum sooner rather than later because of that adoption cycle. And so we started looking a little closer, and we were seeing that there were some parts of our curriculum that weren't addressing everything that we needed them to. And we got to, especially at the kindergarten level. So we started addressing as a whole team in the spring, what does this look like in the classrooms? What is missing? And what are we going to use to fill the gaps? And so when we decided that, oh boy, that team looked at it, it was May was our last meeting, and they were just kind of looking down the barrel of summer going, that is going to be a lot of work. And my partner in crime and I we were thinking, well, why don't we throw this problem at Solara and see what happens? And so we kind of did the first just unit, basically, because we had already had our curriculum aligned with Solara to help teachers be able to pop into a tool and ask it a question, for example, about unit 1 or something like that, and kind of work with it to start to use the tool in that way in conjunction with the curriculum. So we're like, okay, we already have that aligned. Let's upload what we think will fill the gaps into it. And we got together, there was all the kindergarten teachers, and we were able to align what we already have with what we're going to fill in the gaps, and use that educator insight to create a scope and sequence for the kindergarten team in one day. So that saved us an entire summer. And I think I'm afraid that if we had gone ahead without that, we would have started the year with kindergarten teachers that were burnt out already. And that is just, they need their time. And so that was pivotal for us.
I love that example too, so much, that basically being able to utilize it to come up with a scope and sequence. But I know that your team still had to do some reviewing, some refining, and applying that professional judgment. So would love to just hear what that looked like. So after you got your initial output, kind of what was the spot checking process with what came out?
Yeah, our spot checking process, and I'll highlight this portion. It was a lot. They went through with a fine tooth comb, and we're looking, do we like this? And how about this? And, but where they really loved to go through and use their insights was for the read alouds. And we've discussed this before. Kindergarten teachers are passionate people and they are exuberant, and they were very passionate about the read alouds. And so they were able to align those, they chose them, and they were able to also use Solara and plug in the name of their read alouds and say, does this align with this with this book and why. And it was able to tell them that. So it was a great opportunity to use the tool for them and still feel like their voices and their passion, especially for read alouds, were heard.
Yes, I absolutely love that. And as a former kindergarten teacher, I agree with you. We're a very passionate bunch. So love that so much. Samantha, let's kick it back over to you. Would love to just hear a little bit about how you were able to provide tier 2 and tier 3 interventions to your students, and essentially, like, how did you use Solara to help build personalized tracks for those students who needed a tier 2 and tier 3 support?
Oh, just forgot to unmute. So, as I said before, I early on became the co-chair of the Literacy School Improvement Committee. And so a while ago, I don't know how many years, we hired a reading interventionist, and they, for a while, their main purpose was just providing individual tutoring to students that were identified as needing some extra supports. It was a formal process, but not quite structured enough. And so when we really started honing in on the literacy goal in terms of the Michigan continuous improvement process, our literacy interventionists became a lot more specific and structured. So at the high school level, we have a tier 2 class called ELA Essentials. So students coming into the high school are identified with a couple of data points on needing extra support in English language arts. And the literacy interventionist, who is also a teacher, she teaches that course and works with them. And then in the wintertime, she and her literacy interventionist parapro, they meet with students as small groups and also individual for one-on-one tier 3 support. The small groups are tier 2 targeted. Mm-hmm. And so it became a lot more structured, and we had a system, but trying to provide them that individualized support, it was a struggle trying to connect curriculum with what the English classes are doing and all of that. And so one thing that the interventionist did this past year was use Solara to create individual scaffolded paths using the curriculum that she has for her tutoring and all of the data that we have on the students in terms of their literacy capabilities. And so she was blown away by how quickly that happened and that it was connected right to the curriculum that she uses. And so she is planning, I believe, on implementing that this coming year. And I look forward to figuring out how well that works for her. We also utilize the Panorama and Solara system for our behavioral tier 2 interventions. We haven't quite gotten to that tier 3 part yet, but it's provided a lot of really awesome structure for things that like we did, but like I said, the structure just needed a little fine tuning and to be a little bit more specific, and so that anyone knew that this is the process that we use.
Great. I love hearing that you were able to do it for both academic interventions as well as behavior interventions. We know that, schools are having to really think about the whole child. So not just the academic component, but if a student has a hard time with their behavior, making sure that that gets addressed as well. So really appreciate both those examples. And Samantha, would love to just hear from you because I think we've touched on this already, but that teachers do wear a lot of hats and have a ton of responsibility, and would just love to hear a little bit more about how reducing kind of some of that mental exhaustion of having to create things from scratch. What are you able to like use your time to focus on instead when you have that support from Panorama Solara?
So I'm going to give a little bit of um, vulnerable honesty here.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things I struggled with these past couple of years was providing meaningful feedback for my students in the grading process. I frequently just ran out of time in my planning period to really sit down and give meaningful feedback to all my students. And whether that's, a project we did or writing a task or looking at just their warm-up sheets that they turn in every week. I was making like compromises in myself. Okay, I'll look at one and grade that and do that. But because of the planning process and making sure things are up to speed, and I'm recreating documents or creating things as expectations change, or I have to pivot because students aren't grasping something as a group. I was really losing time on doing that, or I was trying to multitask during class while the kids were doing independent work. I was working on something, and that was taking away time I could be sitting down and giving feedback in real time. And so being able to use Solara and how quick of a process that is, where I can input my own document and some suggestions, or just ask to, what would this look like, or create this. And going through it and making sure it's doing everything that I want it to, I feel like my time is much more allocated in either making something better or being able to give that meaningful feedback. I'm now walking around the classroom during independent work time, making sure students get what they're doing in real time, rather than worrying about making the next task or something along those lines. And then my planning period is much more open to giving that feedback as well, looking through their assignments. I just feel like I can make more quality lessons because I'm not so hung up on formatting and typing.
Yeah.
Like it's taking away it's not taking it away, because it still takes time to go back over it and look at it. But a lot of teachers are like, I wish I could just teach rather
Yeah.
than deal with all the back end paperwork. This is allowing me to just teach,
Yeah.
and it's great.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I love that. Thank you for sharing that piece around being able to give your students more meaningful feedback. Because when we think about, even remembering many years ago, at least for me, back to being a student, how do you get better if you don't know what you need to improve upon, and if you don't get that feedback? So absolutely, definitely setting your students up for success by you being able to be that soundboard for them and be able to give them that real-time feedback. I love that example so much. So thanks for sharing. Elizabeth, I'm going to pivot back over to you. I'm going to ask you a question that we didn't actually practice, but I do know that you're going to have a great answer, and I'm not worried about you answering this. One thing I
Super.
thought
This is
of is
my
Samantha
favorite.
was the one thing I thought about with Samantha kind of sharing her examples was just, I know you were super thoughtful with rollout of Solara and kind of started really, really small, like as in mostly just you utilizing it, you and your district partner that you've mentioned a few times. And like really making sure you had a really good grasp on it before you introduced it to the broader staff. So yeah, would just love to hear a little bit about like when you first adopted it, kind of what your priorities are, and then now thinking to like year 2 of having it, what the priorities are for next school year. So a little bit about rollout, adoption, and training.
Yeah, rollout, we kind of talked about it amongst admin level, and I think I actually had just a meeting one-on-one with you and Nick, and just saying, is this something else that we're just trying to, roll out? Is this going to be meaningful for our staff? What are we going to do with it? So in the beginning, it started with just probably a group of 5 of us. And we were searching for ways, okay, how can we use this to improve? Maybe it will give us more information about our data that we already have. We were really starting out with okay, how is it going to help us talk about our data more than it was about these literacy outcomes and IRIPs. And then slowly it moved from that original format, and then it started adding layers onto what it was capable of doing. And we're like, all right, more people need this. And then we rolled it out to our title teachers so they could use it for IRIPs. And then after that, we were like, we really think everyone needs it. And it was, we really, because we don't make decisions from the top down here, we like to really have groups of people come together. We had a group of people come together, maybe about 20 people. I think Sam was on that team as well. Go figure. And we had that conversation, and what we came back to was we want to ask everyone at Big Rapids Public Schools what they would like to do with it. And that's when we really started throwing everything we had at Solara, and we're like, you better work because we like you, but is everybody else, so we better prove that. So we threw everything at it that we could, because it is a tool. It even says at the bottom, AI is not perfect, you have to prompt it. And we really went through it together and were able to then roll it out to the entire district. And I think we are just now just we're really starting to just scrape the edge of what it can do for us.
Yep.
So going forward and coming up in the fall, we're really looking at taking what we created for our literacy teams, even at the elementary level, and then, as Sam mentioned, at the secondary level, and seeing what it does. Because hey, we're going to use what it gave us already, what we combined with our own ideas. And this coming year, if we need to use it again to refine that, we would do the same. We would use it in the same way as we started.
Great. I love that. Yeah. And I love it that a lot of other districts are probably in the same spot that you are, where, some folks might be very familiar with AI, some folks might be kind of on the spectrum of being newer to it or not having utilized it that much. So I really appreciate that you kind of wanted to become an expert yourself and really test it out before the expectation was for other folks to use it across your district. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that because I think it's a really important piece. And just to kind of share a little behind the curtain at Panorama, I know she's mentioned my colleague Nick a few times. He sits in on our teaching and learning team. But essentially, we have trainings, both asynchronous trainings and direct, either virtual or in-person training. So just want to kind of highlight that component, that we have a group of experts, folks on our team that can do kind of the initial trainings with your team as well. So just thought that that would be important, because I know if some of us might be new to this AI thing, I know I certainly am no expert, but yeah, helpful to learn from others. So just wanted to highlight that work, because I know Big Rapids did a great job with rollout. So I'm coming up here on our last question that we had prepared, and then we can open it up to the audience. So if you are sitting patiently waiting for the Q&A portion, feel free to start firing up that keyboard. But our last question that we've got planned is just general advice for other districts who are thinking about getting started with Solara. Elizabeth, we can start with you since you're already unmuted, but Samantha, we would love for you to answer this question as well. So any advice?
I would say ensure like your MTSS structures are strong, and that when and how you're going to use the product, and how you're going to utilize it as a tool in your district and not to replace what you're thinking and your judgment, and know what you're going to use it for. I think it's really important that we model, for other people in our society, but our students especially, how we are responsibly using AI, and how we're not using it to replace our own thinking. We're using it to enhance it, and to help save time, truly. And so I would say just make sure your structures are strong to start with and know how and when and why you're going to use it. In addition to, just have it to have that plan.
Great. I love that. Samantha, how about for you? Any advice that you'd share?
So ditto to all that, but also really in education, it's really easy to see like the next new shiny thing and want to like immediately grab onto it. But in our district, there was a lot of true consideration of everybody's opinion, like everyone's thoughts. The team that was created included people from every single building, all the grade levels, all the different, there was a lot of representation for the whole district to decide if this was something that fit our needs and it was something that we could utilize. But again, to emphasize Elizabeth's point, before that meeting even happened, we knew what it was going to be used for, its purpose, all of that why was already there. You can't just go into something without having that purpose just because it seems cool, it's AI, whatever. But really having that idea ahead of time, because you end up with this almost implemented thing where people don't know what to do with it and then they stop using it. It's almost like becomes like a like, why did we get it in the first place? So really make sure that you have a wide representation from your district to evaluate whether or not it is something that fits your needs.
Yep, I absolutely love that. I love it that there was very clear buy-in from the front end. And I think Elizabeth, as well as her team, did a great job of really hearing from folks like what's something that's keeping you up at night. And then we'll spend the time to figure out whether or not Solara can help solve that issue, and then we'll roll it out from there. So I think that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that piece around the why, Samantha. So with that, we are going to open it up to the crowd for questions. Feel free to utilize the chat. And then we'll ask the question and have either Elizabeth or Samantha or perhaps both share their insights. So we've got a few minutes here at the end. Feel free to start typing away. And I'll use my little teacher wait time to hang out here until we get some of those questions populating. Don't be shy. Okay, we've got one. Yes, and actually I might be able to answer this one, Brantley. So there's a question in the there's a question in the chat right now around whether or not it's closed AI. Great question. So I'll just start off by saying we are SOC 2 as well as FERPA compliant. And that our AI tool is not learning from any of the prompts or any of the information. So in that sense, I do believe it's considered closed AI. I don't know if any of my colleagues want to fact check me on that, but essentially we're not using it to train any other models or things of that nature. And I think one of the things, Elizabeth, I did see you come off mute if you wanted to share, one of the things that really attracted to Big Rapids or attracted them to Solara was that we did have those compliant and safety certifications.
That was one of the main concerns for our staff as a whole, is that all of our data stayed in one spot, that it wasn't learning from our own particular students' data. It wasn't learning from the curriculum we had already purchased, and that we really were FERPA compliant in that neighborhood. We were very concerned about that. And so that was offered to us, and that was one of the key things that prompted us to, or caused us to purchase the product.
Great question. Thanks, Brantley. Yes, I loved Brittany's metaphor, a walled garden. Yes, exactly.
I'm going to steal that, Brittany. Walled garden. That's perfect.
Sounds nice. Yes, and then Liz just shared that we also do role-based access for Solara. So essentially, and that's actually with all of our tools, it's role-based access. So essentially, like if you're a classroom teacher, you can see a set amount of students that should be tied to you, basically the students you're currently working with. And then we have school administrators, district administrators, school administrators can only see their buildings. District administrators can see district-wide. So, and we also can make custom roles as well. So a good way to kind of make sure that students' data and personal information is staying safe. Thanks for sharing that, Liz and Brittany. Any other questions top of mind here for our team at Big Rapids? Yeah, so I see Dwight asked, what are your next steps? And I'm assuming that's for Big Rapids. So I'll let them share kind of what they're thinking about for the 26-27 school year.
So Elizabeth can speak for the district wide, but for the high school, one thing that I should have mentioned before, but we had at the district level, each building admin recommended people from recommended people from their building to become Solara coaches. And so it became kind of like a train the trainer type of thing. And so each building has a core team of teachers that understand and were trained on Solara, me being one of them from the high school, surprise, surprise. So then the point was that we went back to the buildings and showed our staff members the basics on how to use it. And so that happened a couple times last year, but it was still so new, and there was a lot of other new things that were going on within the building that our next steps at the high school level is to continue that conversation on how to utilize Solara, and also we're also going to incorporate ethical use of AI PD across the year as well, whether it's both in terms of our usage as teachers, but also student usage, and how to work through that, because that's becoming such a huge thing nowadays.
Kind of stole mine a little bit.
Sorry, the benefit of going first.
We didn't talk about it. We didn't talk about it ahead of time. But I would just expound upon that, because it's true. That's what we're going to do. We have a lot of new hires this year that are going to learn from these. We call them Solara stars. Let's see what we did there. So we are hoping too that learning in each of the buildings from teams, the buy-in is so much stronger than if it were just me coming from district level every day to talk, or every PD day to talk to somebody about how they can use it and what they can do with it, when it is so much more impactful when it is a teacher like Sam going to her colleagues and saying, this is how I used it, and less of a, this is how you use it, and more of a, this is how you can use it, from your colleagues, rather than some person who's not in your classroom every single day. So I am looking forward to that, and for our new group of teachers to learn from teachers like Sam as well.
Yes, Sam, I'm really getting the sense is just the all-star rock star teacher. I wish I could go back in time and be in your science class, Sam. We got a few questions from my colleague Liz that she just chatted me around being able to customize Solara for your district's needs. Essentially, what we've mentioned a couple times is it is completely customizable. So you can upload things like your strategic plan, you can upload curriculum, so that essentially we have a sense of what your district priorities are, what curriculums, what standards, those types of things that your teachers are utilizing on a daily basis. Elizabeth kind of spoke to that they used it to not only upload their curriculum, but also create that scope and sequence. Anything else that you would share around it being customizable? Sam, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I got really amped about this because this is something I need help
Yeah,
with.
no, go for it.
So at the high school level, there's a lot of, we've been kind of gaining traction in different departments, proposing new classes, new elective classes. So recently I created an earth science elective because we have 0 earth science electives. And so I created and proposed meteorology. And one thing that we used Solara for was, hey, you know, we haven't done this process in a really long time, this curriculum proposal process. And so we had these like old documents. I'm pretty sure we didn't even have like a digital copy anymore, where we're just passing out paper copies. But I think it was our other MTSS director who plugged in this document and the like hexagonal tool for decision making into Solara and created a proposal document for requesting a new class, and covering all the bases that the curriculum council would want to see with a requested class. So taking the old, and the hexagonal tool is a relatively new tool that we've since adopted, and being able to combine that and provide a resource to fill out, for a template for everyone to fill out if they want to request new curriculum.
Love that. Elizabeth, anything else you wanted to share on the customizable piece?
I do love the tools. That has been super helpful for our teams, especially using it for, I mean, like Sam said, they had no earth science. There's not a lot for things like science and social studies at the elementary level a lot of times. So they were able to create tools based off of that, and just to make it a little more engaging for students. And so I think teams have really enjoyed that. They're able to use it for so many for so many things, especially since all of the data is connected. So yeah.
Great. Love that. Yeah, and speaking of data being collected, maybe this can be our last question, but folks also asked if you already have like the survey platform, or if you already have student success, or perhaps both of those, how does Solara integrate with those two other tools?
So one specific way that I'm sure Elizabeth was probably going to bring up that we've used it is, so we do perception survey to evaluate comprehensive needs. Is that what you were going to say, Elizabeth? Like, okay.
You go on, Sam. I'd rather hear your voice than mine.
Okay. All right. So we utilize the surveys for perception surveys with family, staff, students. And during one of our school improvement or MyKit meetings at the district level, Elizabeth walked us through on how to take the results from the perception surveys and identify our strengths and opportunities for improvement to put into our comprehensive needs assessment. And goodness, did that take so much less time than what it used to, and we could actually focus in on okay, what are our next steps then? So Solara painted the picture, or not really painted the picture, gave us the overview of, okay, this is so, blank percentage had favorable responses to this, whatever. And then from there, we said, okay, there's this pattern. What do we do from here? So that's one way we connected the surveys with Solara.
I love that. So it basically helped you kind of come up with an action plan, which is great.
Yeah, I think thanks for pointing that out. I feel like we could just keep having a conversation about all the things because I keep forgetting, oh yeah, we did use it for that. But I think it's really important because when it spits out the data like that, because oftentimes when you're working on school improvement things up here, and not everybody can be on that team, right? I mean, you can't fit hundreds of staff in one room to be on a team. So when you can compile the data like that and have it summarized and then present it to staff when staff who maybe are not a part of all of those teams at different times for whatever reason, you're able to come back to them if they say, well, why are we doing this? And we'll say, well, here it is. And we're able to say, this is why we made the decision that we made. And then they might be impassioned and emboldened by that, and they might want to join teams too, and then we get to hear their voice as well. So I think it just stacks one right on the other and just starts to snowball after a while.
Love that. You sound like you guys have such a great little happy team at Big Rapids, which I definitely have experienced from working alongside you all for the past few years.
I do like it here. I'm a bit biased.
Yes. Well, team, we're coming to a close here, so I'll go ahead and close us out. First of all, just thank you so much to not only our attendees, but also thank you. Extra kudos to our two speakers today who did a wonderful job kind of planning and preparing some of their responses and just had a great time planning this webinar with you all. So thank you guys for being with us today. Really, what I'm taking away from Big Rapids' story is that it's not about replacing that educator expertise or simply saving time. It's about giving educators and district teams a stronger starting point so that they can spend more time on the work that matters most, which is teaching, supporting students, and making thoughtful instructional decisions. We've got a few things in the chat here. Liz just posted a video. And like I said, we're going to share this resource, not only this actual recording tomorrow, but some other resources as well. And I believe we have a little poll that's going to pop up here. If you would like someone from Panorama to reach out directly to you and your team, feel free to just click yes. And we will make sure that someone from our team reaches out to you. But with that, that's the close of our session today. Thanks again for everyone for being here. We appreciate it, and have a wonderful rest of your July, our last week in July, and a great back to school season, team. Thanks so much.